rifle in the back. This is on, but it's up to you guys if you want to use it. Because we only have one, so it's up to you. I'll hand it over, so you guys can pass it around if you'd like.
See how the reaction.
Sure, perfect. All right, hi everyone. Thank you so much for being here. If you don't know me, I'm Sam. I'm the owner of Blue House Books, and if you're going to be here all day, you will hear that like 4 more times. So thank you. Thank you guys so much for being here today. This is our 3rd time doing this event, and we're so excited to be here and bringing you authors. Who's been to this event before? I'm just always curious. Yay! And welcome to all the newbies also. Thank you guys. All right, so I will let our authors take it away, but just a couple more reminders of other fun things we have going on today. We have the tattoo table right out here. They look at your tattoo and give you a book recommendation based on your tattoo, which I think is genius. So check that out. Of course, the other panels, if you have any kids with you, we do have a couple story times going on. We have food and vendors out in the lobby, so it's a really fun day. And then also just some other upcoming things at Blue House Books, since you guys like mystery thriller books. We have Juno Black of the Shady Hollow Mystery Series coming on October 10th. And we would love for you guys to be there. This is their final book of the Shady Hollow series, so you need to get to this event before you miss them for good. All right, and without further ado, Miss Laura, I'll let you take it away.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Sam. Is this necessary? Is this helpful if we use this?
Yeah.
Is it okay?
Yeah.
Seems like it's working, but you're telling me it's working. All right. All right. Hi, I am Lori Rader Day. I'm going to be the boss of this panel today. My natural state, being the boss of stuff. I am the author of 7 and counting mystery or thriller novels. The latest that is out there, available for sale, is The Death of Us. And I also have a historical called The Death at Greenway, which is set at Agatha Christie's house during World War II. Those are both available out there today. I live in Chicago. I'm happy to be in Kenosha. I actually love Kenosha. What's the sandwich place? The famous sandwich shop in Kenosha?
It used to be Hungry Head.
What's it called?
It used to be Hungry Head.
Hungry Head. Yeah. No, it's like the last name. Starts with a T.
Tanitas.
Oh. Yes, I'm a fan. Okay, so we're each going to introduce ourselves. Next.
I'm Allison Bucola. My most recent book is The Ascent. It is cult-based suspense. And my first book is Catch Her When She Falls, also psychological suspense. And I'm from the Chicago area, just outside Chicago.
Hi, I'm Michelle Cox. I write historical fiction. I have the Henrietta and Inspector Howard series, which is a 1930s mystery romance series set in Chicago. I have a spin-off series, which is a Jane Austen in Wisconsin series, and I also have a standalone, The Fallen Woman's Daughter, and I also live in the Chicago area.
Hi, I'm Lena Chern. I, as well, live in the Chicago area. I am the author of Play the Fool, of the Play the Fool mystery series. I have, actually, the second book in my series, Tricks of Fortune, just came out earlier this year in July. It's basically a lighthearted mystery series about a cranky tarot card reader who solves her best friend's murder and various other mysteries. My second book, Tricks of Fortune, is actually based on a real-life murder investigation that I was involved in. Just the investigation, not the murder. So check it out.
We're going to lose some time passing this back and forth. So actually my first question is about the sort of the origin of, well, I said that your latest book, so you can decide which one that is, where you got the idea for it. I'll begin. So for The Death of Us, it was right after the pandemic lockdown, and I was on a flight, maybe like the first flight after all of that, and I was flying probably like at 30,000 feet, and I looked down and I saw a little tiny, it was like clear day, you could see all the way to the ground, and I saw a little tiny quarry. There's actually quite a few of them. If you're flat, you can actually look down, you can see quarries all over the place. But I saw a quarry, and there was water in it, standing water at the sea, and I thought, as we do as mystery writers, I bet there are a lot of bodies in a body of water like that. And it turns out I am right. I did some research for the book, and it was, and you'll see these stories popping up a lot lately. There are some groups that go looking for cold case missing persons in bodies of water, because often a mistake or an accident or one car accident will put cars in water, and that's where they stay. And sometimes they even know that's probably what happened, but if they can't see the car, there are very few ways to get to the car. But there are some groups that do, they're divers, and they want to do it as like a charity. They do it, for kindness, to close some of these really terrible stories. So, yeah, it's a fun book. It does not have divers. It has divers very briefly. It's about a family and how the family was built, and who you call family and who gets to be close to you. Or was it idea for the Ascent? Where did you get the idea for the Ascent?
So The Ascent is, like I said, it's cult-based suspense. And I knew I wanted to write about a cult. I think maybe because I was starting to write it around the pandemic. I was thinking a lot about close-knit communities. I think I was missing a community of my own around that time. And so I was watching all these cult documentaries. And I kept on finding myself drawn to these stories about cult survivors and what happens to them after they leave a cult. So I feel like a lot of times when you're reading cult books, the story is sort of, what draws someone in, and what does it look like when you're in the cult, and then the finish line is sort of, how do you get out of this cult? How do you escape from this situation? And when I was watching these stories of survivors, when they were describing their experiences, it sounded like getting out was really just the first hurdle. And then sort of reconnecting to society was its own thing. So I wanted to write about a character who was going through that, and that sort of grew into Lee, who's the main character in The Ascent, who grew up in a reclusive community, was abandoned, they disappeared, she doesn't know what happened to them, and she's sort of struggling with that loss. So that's what
So all of my ideas, or many of them, come from my experience working in a nursing home in Chicago in the early 90s. So I actually write a weekly blog about those stories. It's called Novel Notes of Local Lore. But for my standalone novel, The Fallen Woman's Daughter, that book is very much based on a true story. It's about a young girl in southern Iowa who runs away with a carnival barker, and kind of what happens to her life. So that's where I got the idea for that story. But for my Henrietta and Inspector Howard series, that main character, Henrietta, is also based on a real woman that I met in the nursing home. She had this amazing life in the 30s in Chicago, and she told me her whole life, and she had all these strange jobs. She worked at the World's Fair. She was a taxi dancer, and she worked in a burlesque hall. So when I was starting to write, which was like, maybe 15 years after that, I decided that, she was going to be my main character. So kind of started there, and it just exploded from there. So.
Well, my latest book, Tricks of Fortune, which just came out earlier this year, was actually, the idea I got for it was from when I was actually doing research for my first book, Play the Fool. I basically wanted to find out a little bit about how local law enforcement works in my area, so I got involved with my local police department and some of the cops there, started kind of shadowing them and sort of going to them for information. Well, right around that time, this was almost on the button 10 years ago, September, there was a very, very high-profile death, I'm going to say, in around my area, in Fox Lake, Illinois. There was, some of you might remember this very highly celebrated police lieutenant, Joe Glinowitz, was killed. It was a huge, huge deal. He was a 30-year veteran of the force, youth leader, upstanding guy, beloved by the community, and this case just exploded. The FBI came in, the ATF came in, made the national news, and I just so happened to be in contact with one of the police officers who was assigned to the investigation. So I kind of got to see the investigation firsthand from the back end. And the minute they started looking into this guy's personal life, it became clear that he was very much opposite of the kind of image that he was projecting. And it was incredible. And what fascinated me about it was that people really kind of didn't want to believe the truth about this guy. He very much had a specific image, and people were very, very attached to it. And at one point, I won't give away exactly what happened because my book is that kind of a fictionalized account of the case and the investigation and what eventually happened. When the truth was no longer, when people were no longer able to ignore it, the story that was told about this guy kind of flipped on its end. And it was almost like people enjoyed hating him as much as they had enjoyed kind of lionizing him. And that's something that really, really stuck with me because I feel like my books, which are about tarot cards, are really kind of about storytelling and the stories that we tell ourselves in order to make sense of our world, about our relationships, about public figures. And that's something that really struck me about this entire story, specifically with regard to the stories that we as a society tell ourselves and each other about law enforcement officers. And the idea of heroism and how genuine it is, how performative it is in some cases. All of that I found really, really fascinating, and it's kind of stuck with me all these years. I knew I was going to write about it someday, and that's Tricks of Fortune is kind of the result of that.
Aha, got it back. Okay. So the title of the panel that we're doing is Gaslighting 101. And Sam had sort of an image of us talking a little bit about how we write surprise into our stories, and twists specifically. And it's hard to talk about twists without ruining any books. Like, I'm even worried about using like an example from Agatha Christie, for instance. You may not have read it. It's 85 years old, but still, you might enjoy it, and you don't want me to ruin that book for you. But we're going to try. Okay, we're going to try to talk about how we write surprise into our stories without ruining any of our books, at least. So to talk about that, I want to talk a little bit about how we write. And I think that there are sort of two, like a spectrum of how people write novels, and we can argue about that if you disagree. We talk about them usually, I don't know, Allison, if you will recognize these terms, but as plotting and pantsing. Okay, we've got this. Everybody's got this. All right, so plotting, you're going to sit down and plot out your novel, and then you write at least somewhat to the outline. People do that. And then the other end of the spectrum would be pantsing, writing by the seat of your pants, because you're kind of winging it the whole way. You're not going to sit down and plan things. You're going to maybe inch your way in and then write and see what happens. And I don't know where all y'all are on the spectrum, so that'll be a surprise for me to hear that. So I want to hear about where you are, and it is a spectrum. It's not necessarily all one thing and all the other. You can maybe be half and half, and we can talk about that if that's what you are. So where are you on the spectrum, and has your strategy changed over time or project to project? If you're a pantser, and you know it, have you ever used a plotting technique? And if you're a plotter, how do you stay open to allow surprise to happen? Okay, so you can kind of figure out where you are. I am team pantser. The fact that I have written down questions is actually a miracle because I don't plan a dang thing. That is, I don't like instruction manuals. I just got a new phone and I don't care about like how it works. I'll figure it out as I go. It'll be fine. I'm married to IT, so he can handle that if I run into problems. So I'm definitely a pantser. My strategy has not changed exactly. Sometimes I'll know a little bit more than other times. Sometimes I'll know something about the book. Like for my second book, I thought I had it all figured out. I knew who the killer was. But then I wrote the book, and the book taught me that I was wrong, that it was not that person. And so I had to keep writing and figure out who it was. So that's a little bit different. And then sometimes I will know maybe one thing that I want to be true at the end of the story. All right, we're haunted, it's fine. Seems like such a nice library.
Our other library really is haunted.
Oh, which one is that?
Downtown.
Simmons, Haunted Simmons, downtown.
Okay, we're going there after, right? After party.
For sure.
So have I ever used a plotting technique? I will say that the closest I've gotten to plotting is sometimes, so I'll get myself into a story. I'll write, usually I'll know like 2 or 3 things. I think this is the kind of story I want to write. This is the kind of character I might want to write about. For my book, Under a Dark Sky, I knew I wanted to write about a young widow, so I knew that about her. And I wanted to write about a dark sky park, so I knew the setting. And then I learned a little bit about dark sky parks to start writing. And when I learned that this dark sky park is where they control light so you can see the nighttime sky the way nature intended, I thought it needs a body, obviously, to happen there. I learned that the one I was using as my model was they had a guest house that you could rent and stay there. I'm like, yes, let's do that. Except I couldn't figure out how to rent it. Like, was it the whole house? Was it just a room? Were there people there with me, or did I have to rent the whole? And in that confusion, I realized, well, that's an opportunity. I can use that confusion to give to my characters and get strangers in the same place at the same time, and that's fun. And once I had that, then I was off to the races. I could, just write and see what happened. But sometimes I think you have to change. I will get about halfway in and then realize I don't know what I'm doing. Part of my process. I call it the dark night of the soul, but it's usually about 6 weeks long, where I sort of, flap around. But that's when I might go and look to see what I have and do a reversed outline and then kind of see where the story is. So that's sort of plotty. But a real plotter can tell me it isn't.
Well, I'm not a real plotter, so.
Okay.
I'm much more of a pantser too. I tend to start with like a character and like an issue, like some problem that character has. I'm not a big craft book person, but I really like Story Genius a lot. I don't know if any of you have heard of Story Genius, but
That's very plotty.
it is a little plotty. Well, I don't use all the plotting parts, but I think it's got some helpful exercises for kind of figuring out who your character is. So I enjoy doing that. So my first book I wrote, it was just totally, I would like sit down, if a scene came to me, I would write it, and then I went back and revised it and kind of pulled it all together, and I was like, this is it, I'm just a pantser, this is how I do it. And when you write your first book, you have to write the whole thing, you submit it to publishers, they decide based on that. When you write your second book, you can sell it on proposal, so you write the first 6 chapters, and you have to do an outline for that. And I was like, well, this isn't me, that's not my process, that's not gonna work. It actually was extremely helpful, I feel like, having like that outline to work off of. But then when I was working on it, the whole thing ended up changing. So the first half of my book looks like my outline, and then the second half of the book, the characters just took over and had to do something different. So I feel like I'm not like a strict pantser, but I am definitely more in the pantser direction than outlining.
Spectrum, I see it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, don't hate me, but
Here we go.
I'm a plotter. So I have evolved over time. So my first book, I would just write I would take my kids' old school notebooks and just write kind of like a rough outline of what's going to happen. But then as time went along, I started to write more detailed outlines until I got to, so the book 7 of my mystery series, it's kind of like an Agatha Christie, and it's like an old manor house in England, and I wrote it so that anybody could have been the murderer, and everybody had a motive, and so I kind of had an idea in my head of who it was going to be, but then by the end, I'm like, well, now you really actually have to decide who is the murderer. So I'm like, so I picked the person, but then I had to go back and add more clues and red herrings, and I'm like, I am never, ever, ever doing this again where I don't know the end of the book. So by the time I started writing my Merriweather series, the Jane Austen retellings, I got to the point where I'm like, I'm so tired of submitting the book to a developmental editor. And they're like, take out this chapter, take out this character, rework this whole thing. I'm like, I mentally can't do this. So I'm like, why don't I submit an outline to the developmental editor, and then you can like move it around at that point so I'm not so heavily invested, and that really worked well. So I'm kind of all over.
So I feel like everyone is sort of some combination of all over, which probably describes me as well. I think I would characterize myself as more of a plotter in transition. Yes, because I tend to plot obsessively at the beginning, but it's mostly to stave off the terror of writing. I kind of feel like I need to know exactly where a story is going before I start writing it. Although, so I write these exhaustive, like 30-page outlines where I, down to like what people are wearing and stuff like that, but it's mostly just sort of to feel like I got this. And of course, once I start writing, that outline completely goes out the window and the story kind of takes over, and I remember, oh, this is actually fun, and I actually like kind of discovering on the fly where a story is going to develop, and basically the end result ends up looking nothing like whatever that outline initially looked like. I would like, I think, to start maybe pantsing a little bit more.
It sounds like you're a pantser that needs like a like a safety net. You need a safety net, but you are a pantser, is what I'm hearing.
Oh, I learned something about myself
Welcome,
today.
sister. Okay. Okay, we're still talking about twists and that sort of thing, right? All right. So, many authors have said their stories end up taking unexpected turns, especially. Can you tell us about a time a project surprised you, or maybe circumstances helped you see the story a new, better way? A time a project surprised. I mean, they always surprise me, obviously, because I'm just writing blind. Does anything occur to you automatically, or?
Well,
You can start.
I think it's every book, it's like you kind of have a vision of where it's going to go, whether you're a plotter or a pantser, and things just kind of change mid-stride. So I remember, like, before I started writing, when authors would say, oh, the characters just spoke to me and didn't want to do that. I'm like, come on, that's ridiculous. You're the writer. But now that I'm a writer, I'm like, I kind of understand that sometimes you just really want a character to do a certain thing, and it just doesn't seem like the right thing. So in my mystery series, Henrietta is main character, but her younger sister Elsie was always just supposed to be a bit character, and she just continued to grow and grow and grow across the series until she has almost an equal storyline to what's going on with Henrietta. So that was really a surprise to me.
Yeah, well, I'll just say, I really, I agree, I had the same reaction to people saying that about their characters, but it's really true, and I feel like a lot of times if I'm stuck in my writing, then I have to like take a step back and be like, oh no, this is just something that I want. It's not something that the story wants. I don't know if I can give specific examples of something changing in my book without giving away the twists, but I feel like I have that point I've had that point in both the books I've written so far. And it feels so terrible when you're working on a project and you're like, this isn't working. But then when you go back through it and you start to look for all the like crumbs that you left for yourself and you see how all those details come together, like there is no better feeling than having it kind of like come together. So I don't know, I enjoy that part of the process, but it's really painful getting to that process.
I'm going to really struggle to answer this question because there was one very, very big surprise in my first book, Play the Fool, that just kind of like knocked me for a loop, and I cannot talk about it because it pretty much gives away the entire plot of the book. But I'm going to do my best. There was basically a character that I had intended for a certain purpose, and I ended up loving that character so much that I just could not carry through with that intended purpose, and I basically ended up developing this character into much, much more of a sort of engine for the entire story than I had intended. And that was something, again, I feel like everyone has kind of talked about this idea of like characters or stories kind of taking over, but I really did, and yes, it might sound a little bit precious from the outside, but it really is true, because I feel like these stories, I feel like for me anyway, the best material for them kind of comes from some place in my mind that I don't quite have access to on a conscious level. And so it makes sense to me that something that is really good would end up being a surprise to the author, because it's sort of like it comes from some weird little well that you're sort of not aware of. I feel like that was a really rambly answer, but I'm going to stop talking, and I think you'll check out the book and see it for yourself.
I kind of get the feeling that you're going to kill that person, and then you're like, I like him too much. And
I didn't say it.
I'm just going to guess. That's what I guess. So I think when I wrote this question, I had the second part specifically for my answer, because I didn't know how to answer it. May these circumstances help you see the story a new and better way. So my book, The Lucky One, came out in February of 2020. Are we there?
Yeah.
Are we back? Yeah. So that didn't go well. So I had to turn down, or cancel 3 months of intense events like this all over the Midwest. I had to shut down my event that I run in Chicago called Midwest Mystery Conference. You should all come. It's April 11th. And so I was just very sad, and I knew, even though they were saying, oh, if you just shut down for 2 weeks, I'm like, that is not how this is going to go. It's not how it's going to go for me, at least, and I knew that. So what I had, though, was the notes from my editor for my next book, which was Death at Greenway. It was historical, my only historical possibly ever. It was very hard to write. But now what I had was this vista of free time, right? And so I'm at my computer, watching on Facebook where everyone's baking bread. You were all baking bread, admit it. People were doing free concerts, all your favorite artists were doing, anything to be expansive and generous, since we were all in this together. And I didn't feel that way. I felt scared, and I felt mean, and I felt like I don't know what's going to happen. I just don't know what's going to happen. But I had my notes, and very vague notes from my editor, but I decided, well, now that I got the time, I think I'm going to rewrite this entire book. Yes. So I pantsed it, I had a draft, I gave it to my editor, and she said, it's almost there. And I'm like, I don't think she's right. I don't think she's right, and I think this is something that's important to me. I want to be the best editor of my own work, and I knew it was not the book that I intended to write, and I wanted to try again. So here I am writing a book about children being taken away from their families. If you remember what was happening at that time, that happens all the time, actually. And also about a group of people sort of isolated away from what they knew, everything, their homes, taken away, they're sent away from their homes to be isolated in this very distant place from home. It was a lot easier to get into that character's mindset, is what I'm saying. So the circumstances changed, and therefore that was a surprise to me, and I used all of it. I was sitting at my computer watching you guys bake bread, thinking, and I thought to myself, and I've been researching this book about England, 1941, for probably about 2 years at this point, and I thought to myself, I don't have the Blitz spirit. That's what I thought to myself in Chicago in 2020. I don't have the Blitz spirit because I'm not baking bread, and I am not putting teddy bears on my window. I did that. I do like teddy bears. But you know what I mean? I had that mean thought, and I'm like, well, that's what my character's going to think. She doesn't have the Blitz spirit. So I had to make sure that they said that early in the war, and they did. And then that's what she thinks. She doesn't have the Blitz spirit, but she's going to have to do the things that she's being asked to do anyway. Let's see, what do we got here? Okay, let's talk about plot twists. How important is a twist to you? And what tips do you have for writing surprise into your fiction? Can you hear in the question that I don't care that much about twists? Can you hear it? It's silent, but it's in there.
Yeah, but I'll take it. Okay, so my first book does have a twist at the end, but the problem is that once you write a book with a twist, then you feel like your readers are expecting a twist every time, But then if you know that they're expecting a twist every time, is it really a twist? So it gets really confusing. So I don't always have, I guess, what you would call a real twist at the end of every book, but I do definitely have cliffhangers. So something to keep you invested in. The story wraps up except for there's always like one thread that's left unanswered. So it's not a twist, but it works for me.
Because you have a series, right? You
Yeah,
have a series.
exactly.
You would not leave a cliffhanger for a standalone.
No.
No.
Don't do
I've already forgotten the question.
Twist.
That's all I
I
remember.
mean, you know, are twists, are they important to you? And then like, how do you write how do you keep surprising your fiction?
Yeah, I feel like, kind of what we were just saying, I feel like there kind of has to be a twist in a mystery. I don't know, I'm not sure I'm defining twist correctly. I feel like there always has to be some kind of surprise, and yeah, I guess I do find that a little bit difficult because the twist always has to be twisty and surprising, but also supportive throughout. So I do feel like that's one of the most challenging things about writing mystery. Just talk a little bit about my second book, the one that was based on the police officer's death. That one was particularly challenging for me because the real story already had such a crazy twist that I was like, all right, how am I going to honor that, but also add sort of my own twist on it that also kind of rewards the people who might be familiar with this story. So that was definitely a bit of a challenge for me, and I worked for a long time to figure out exactly what I was going to do to this crazy story to make it even more surprising than it already was in real life. I've been told that people did not see my twist coming, so I'll take that as somewhat successful. But yeah, I do feel like that's sort of the part of the story that I often end up struggling with the most, I guess, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think one distinction I've heard people make before that I find kind of helpful is between like reveals and twists. So if you think of a twist as being sort of something that changes the way that you see the whole story, so something that sort of flips an understanding that you had on its head, that's how I think of a twist. And then a reveal is like, oh, which of these 5 people was it? Oh, it's number 4. And that could be surprising, but I don't think it necessarily is the same thing as something that changes your perspective on the story. And I think that when a story has a twist that fits sort of organically into the story, I love those stories. I think they're great. I don't need them as a reader. I feel like if I can pull them off as a writer, it's great. But like as a reader, I really enjoy stories where you see the character growth, you see the mystery kind of developing. If there's something that surprises me, that's great. But as a writer, I don't know how you guys feel, but I'm not often that surprised by things that are happening in mysteries. So I want like a character that I can hook into as a reader. And I think as a writer, I want there to be a twist in my story, but I don't want that to be the thing that's driving the book. Because a lot of readers are really savvy too, and a lot of readers are going to guess. And so if that's all that you really have going on in the book, then then it feels kind of flimsy. So I think characters to me are sort of more important than the twist part.
10 minutes.
Thank you. I love your answer because that's how I feel. I think it's much more important to give you readers a character that you can hang with, that you want to see what happens to that person without it having to have halfway through something changes the entire. I mean, that's fun if it's the kind of story that you're writing. And we've all enjoyed books that have, great twists, but it's never something that I set out, like, I'm going to figure out what my twist is. Obviously, I'm not going to figure it out before I start writing. You've covered that. If something surprising happens, that's really satisfying, but it's not necessarily, at least how I start out thinking about a book. Okay, so 10 minutes, that means we are open to questions from the audience. Yes, sir.
So I don't know if you've seen the map of the overlap of missing persons with the CAPE systems in the United States. So you talk about prairies and...
Good Lord. I have not.
Yeah.
However, somebody else is going to have to take that book because I can barely say the word caves. I am so claustrophobic.
Cave diving is my...
Shut up, sir. For the love of God.
That's my ultimate too.
I adore you for asking a question, but no.
Lena, you can have that one if you need a new one. Keep diving, that's on you. I can barely tell this story, but when my sister first started dating the man who'd become her husband, their first date was spelunking. And so she's telling me and my boyfriend and another friend the story of their first date. And at some point, my boyfriend, now my husband, looked over and saw my face and was like, "Oh, I think you need to stop." No, thank you. But great observation, right? Like some of these, some things just make sense. Also, the highway. The highway is where you find bodies. There were at least 3 serial killers who used the highways as how they found people and then dumped them. Fun day! At least 3 during the 70s, maybe more. And one went through Indiana, which is where I grew up. So it might have been my dad, probably not. Good start there. Anybody else have a question? Yes.
I'm just curious if other mystery authors are influences or different types of authors are what you read and influence you.
Okay, great question. In case you probably all heard it, but who influences you? Other mystery writers, other kinds of writers. Allison, you want to lead us off?
Sure. I would say both for me. I think specifically for The Ascent, the push is sort of motherhood, suspense, mom anxiety mixed into a thriller, and that was a big influence on that book. Girl A by Abigail Dean was an influence. But I feel like when I'm writing and sort of trying to get myself into just the flow of writing, any kind of book can be great for getting into that mindset. I read all over the place, so it's not mystery specific.
My favorite read would be historical fiction, not necessarily mystery. I didn't really set out to write a mystery series. It was just sort of an experiment. I was just going to write one book and see what happened. And then I just loved the characters so much that it turned into a series. But ultimately, my real love is historical fiction. However, I've been starting to listen to audiobooks more, and I'm now addicted to listening to Agatha Christie on audio. So I don't know how to explain that.
I actually did not. I actually very, very recently came to the mystery genre altogether. I didn't grow up reading it. I grew up reading a lot of science fiction, fantasy, horror, stuff like that. And I think part of that has contributed to something. I'm going to agree with something that Allison said about character versus plot. I am actually not tremendously interested in plot, which seems like an odd thing for a mystery writer to say. But I very much, when I read right now, I kind of read all over the place, like a lot of folks here do, because I'm a lot more interested in kind of how an author presents a character, and there's all kinds of writers that do that in all kinds of genres. One of my favorite writers to read right now is Sarah Gran, who does write a lot of crime fiction and mystery kind of stuff, but she also just kind of, one thing I really admire about her is that she kind of writes pretty much whatever the hell she wants. She's written a book in every single genre, and they're all different, but they're all kind of the same. They're all based on these really amazing characters, and the language in them is so kind of DGAF. I just love that appeal of, for me, it's very much about character and style, and plot is much, much lower on that list. So that's sort of my set of influences there.
Other questions?
What are you guys reading right now? What are you recommending?
What are we reading? I just read The Husbands by Holly Grisambio or something like that. It's weird. I like weird. I like weird mysteries and weird nonfiction and weird mainstream fiction. It's about a woman who comes home from a bachelorette party and finds a man in her apartment who's like, "Honey, I'm your husband," except she's not married. And so then he goes to fix something in the attic, and when he comes back down, it's a different guy. So every time the guy goes up to the attic, it turns into a different guy. So she starts using the attic oh, I don't like this one, send him back up, right? It's hilarious. And I also am really into Catherine Newman, who wrote Sandwich, and then her new book is Wreck, and it's really good.
I'm gonna have to read Husbands. I really like
really good.
I really like weird too. I just recently read Angel Down by Daniel Kraus, who's another Chicago author. It's really gruesome. Like you need to be in the right mindset to read it. It's World War II. It's very, very graphic, but it's kind of a surrealist account of a soldier in World War II. And it was or World War I. Sorry, that's right. And that is you don't see
Even
that
worse,
much on
right?
World War I. Yeah. Yeah. But it's great. So.
It's all one sentence too, isn't it?
Yes.
It's
Oh
all
yeah,
one
everything
sentence.
starts with and, which is wild, and it works.
It works.
Yeah.
It's a high wire act.
Okay,
Yeah.
wow. I'm reading Assassin's Quest, that sort of fantasy series, which is totally new for me. It's Robin Hobb. My mom, before she died, she really was begging me to read this series, and I didn't, of course. So I'm like, okay, I'm just going to start this, and I'm really loving it. And I'm actually thinking about doing a historical fantasy series when I finish all my other projects. It's good research.
I feel like I just answered the last question what I was supposed to answer in this one. Right now I'm reading Sarah Grant's Little Mysteries, which is a book of very, very short sort of stories that are kind of masquerading as crime fiction, but are really just a way to explore everybody's existential dread, which I love. I also recently read The Last King of California by Jordan Harper, who is an amazing author who I love, and William Boyle's Saint of the Narrow Street, which is a very, very, very dark crime fiction book that also somehow manages to be strangely positive and emotional, and I kind of love the combination of those two things. So I've been reading a lot of crime fiction lately, but I don't always just stick to that field like I was saying.
How much time do we have left?
We have time for like one more question.
One more question?
I think it's.
I was gonna add,
No,
yeah, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
I was gonna ask what you're working on now.
That was my question.
There we go. I was there with you. Okay, go ahead.
So I am working on another psychological suspense thriller. It is set around here. It's set at a Lake Michigan lake house, and it's three sisters. Well, two sisters coming together. One sister is sort of off in the distance. They remember their past very differently, and they're sort of that's coming to a head. So it's in the works, but that's what we're working on.
Well, right now I am working on the relaunch of my series, so that is taking all of my time. But my next project will be book 3 of the Merriweather series, the Jane Austen in Wisconsin, and the third book will be Sense and Sensibility. So it'll be fun.
I am sort of between books right now and waiting to see if I can possibly continue the Play the Fool series, which would be nice. In the meantime, I'm very consciously trying to write short stories because that is something that I don't do very often and haven't done a whole lot of, and I kind of want, it's part of my experiment to become more of a pantser.
Yes.
So, see how everything ties in. I'm going to see if I can do this, and I will check back with you.
I am writing a traditional mystery that is like an amateur sleuth / private eye mashup, and I'm having the best time just making it as weird and funny as I can. No caves. Okay, thank you so much for having us to the library, to the bookstore. We're very glad to be here. Thank you so much, Kenosha.